Meeting of the Board of Education to order. And if the secretary, is secretary here?
I'm right here.
There she is. If you could please take the attendance.
Of course. Joseph,
Here.
John,
Here.
Greg,
Here.
Jim,
Here.
Alex, Justin, Jennifer, I'm here, Michael, Julie, Peter, and Mary.
Full house. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an Ed Advance Human Resources presentation. Kristen DiVeneri? Did I say your name right?
First time with a microphone, so forgive me. Well, thank you all for having me here tonight. I'm excited about this opportunity that Ed Advance in the Region 12 has provided to me. Just a little bit of my background. I come with about 20 years experience in human resources. 15 years of that is been concentrated in employee benefits, but I do have some experience with all facets of general HR, so I'm really excited to be able to explore those other facets. I just recently became certified in mental health first aid, and I have been pursuing my certificate in group benefits administration. What have we been doing for Region 12 and other districts? So the Ed Advance shared services for HR, we're coming in and assessing your current procedures and processes and helping your folks to work smarter, not harder. So we're reviewing your personnel files, your processes for onboarding especially. That seems to be one of the biggest desires, is smoothing out that process, getting it to work faster. And of course, employee handbooks and other consulting services, job descriptions, hiring, and consulting services. Personnel files, pretty much we're just looking at what's composed in those files, what's contained in those files, what doesn't belong there, make sure they're in compliance, make sure they're in orderly fashion. Okay. Onboarding improvements. AppleTrack has multiple features. Not all regions and districts are using them. So what we've done is we looked at the onboarding process, which can be very time consuming. And what we've done is looked at the features that are already available in AppleTrack, and we've implemented those features to make that process much smoother. And we've eliminated quite a bit of time consuming processes in that procedure. So most of the forms that folks would come in on their onboarding appointment to fill out by hand are now done electronically. So that's taken a lot of time, freed up a lot of time in the central office visit.
And Kristen, I'm just going to fill in for the board. AppleTracks is the way that people apply to our district, and it actually allows them to apply across a number of districts. But it's to say that recognizing there's ways that it's not just about us receiving information, it's also a way for us to communicate with the potential employees, and Kristen has helped us to utilize some of those advances.
Thank you, Megan. And we've also been able to include mandatory training requirements in that communication as well. So the new state mandatory sexual harassment training, we've been able to send the link out to the folks so that they can just click on it and complete that mandatory training along with DCF reporter training and other things as well. Whatever your specific region requires, we can put that in there as well. We also are working on a group distribution email, so that when a new employee is coming on board, we send out that email once they've been hired. We're going to let the building secretaries know, the principals know, IT departments, and all the important folks know we have somebody new coming on. You have your list of tasks of what you need to know, what you need to do, so that that person feels welcomed and they have everything that they need on that first day. So that they're not walking in and saying, where do I go? What do I do? Who's going to give me this? Who's going to give me that? Okay. I've also created a welcome video that will go out to the new person, and it contains all the information for the region, general information, who works at central office, a map of each school, the administration for each school, and important contact information. We're going to do the similar thing for offboarding. So when somebody terminates or retires, who is responsible for doing what? Okay. Who's going to collect the region's number 12 property from that employee? Who's going to turn off access to systems? Who's going to collect keys and all the other things? Okay. Website changes. Again, the employee handbook. This seems to be a topic of interest for all the districts that I'm working with. Ms. Bennett and I are we're on our third draft, I believe, going through that. It's a major project. I'm doing the same thing with one of my other districts, making sure all the pertinent information is in there without having too much information, but giving them the resource to click on. Additional work in progress, job description reviews, making sure that they're up to date and making sure they have all the pertinent information. Hiring and recruiting, finding the resources to get you the right people to come in. And then ongoing consulting, whatever needs you might have, employee relation issues, investigations, anything that you feel that Mrs. Bennett needs, any school issues that come up. If you have any questions, I have a whole team back at Advance that are very well organized, very intelligent, know what they're doing, a lot of resources. Any questions? Anything I can elaborate on? Yes. Mm-hmm.
The handbook, is that specific to each individual school, the employee handbook, or is it generic for all schools,
It's for the district.
for the district?
Mm-hmm.
The AppleTrack process that you described, is that brand new this year?
The process is new this year, yes, but AppleTrack is not new. We're still tweaking that. Anything else? Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is K2 Math pilot presentation. Ms. DeBrito?
Good evening, everyone. So I'm really here just to provide an update. Many of you may recall last year we did pilot in the upper elementary grades 3 through 5, and we had teachers come and present to the board about their experiences with the math program. And the reason for the change was the elevated rigorous delivery and inclusion in the math program. And we at that time decided that we were going to take a closer look at K2. And so we have been piloting from the beginning of this school year, and I wanted to give you some updates. A couple of things that we did in the summer, we did provide some professional development learning. Teachers have come together to talk about the pilot program. They do have videos that help with instruction. They have materials, and they have had several weeks of experiences. Having said that, we also really looked at the program we have been using to the pilot program. And although the pilot program does seem to have very strong fluency, multisensory approach to instruction to help students develop mental math skills, it does seem to lack the games that may be included in the one that we have been using. So students have been used to interacting, having fun with each other in a setting that they are also learning math. So that becomes the big difference. And so the kindergarten teachers have asked to look even deeper at some of the units that will come up later in the year. and they want to spend some time really looking at algebraic thinking with the piloted program, because that was a concern that perhaps the program we were using did not have enough rigor in it. So I just wanted to update you on that we're having lengthy discussions. We want to be very thorough. We definitely want kids to enjoy learning math, and we want them to have a high level of competence as well. So we're going to come back to you later on in the year, but just wanted to let you know that that's what's happening right now. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
For the kindergarten group, what do you focus on math for them?
It's all the same numeracy. It's the same type of standards that the upper grades do. It's just more appropriate for elementary. So, for example, they have to be fluent in being able to decompose numbers from 1 through 5 mentally. So by the end of grade K, they need to be able to do that without counting on their fingers, without having to get objects, right? So we do start with very concrete applications, but then we're hoping that they're building that fluency that they can do it in their mind. So that's just a prime example.
So some of the things that you'll see, Alex, is students understanding the cardinality of number, like what does 5 mean? And to also understand, a lot of times they will show them dice, and you'll see a 5 and a 2, and getting them to see pulling it together and how do you quickly know that that's 7. And doing that at very young ages, so that way there is an understanding of how numbers work, how things come together. So making certain there's a comfort in that and doing it in a way that doesn't feel like we're just drilling and killing with the kids.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time we have something I've been waiting to see. This is going to be terrific. This is a presentation by our art teachers, Linda McMillan, Jane Manley, and Donna Wright.
Is this on? It's very quiet. It's on? Yeah.
Thank you for picking up.
We wanted to present to you choice-based learning. It's a new initiative that we're doing in the art program K-12. I'm Donna Wright, I'm the head of the art department, and I teach high school art and middle school art. This is Linda McMillan. She teaches photography up at the high school and middle to high school classes. And this is Jane Manley. She teaches K-5 art at all the elementary schools. So choice-based learning is a personalized instruction program where students hopefully will be improving their creative thinking. So this began back in 2015. We started to think about our goals and what we wanted to research for the 2015-16 school year. And we noticed that some of our students were not as engaged as we wanted them to be, and we had some apathetic learners in the class. So we wanted to figure out how do we get these kids motivated? So we researched that throughout the year, and we came up with 3 major findings. And those findings are that choice-based activities pique interest in students, that novelty engages students, and that subject matter needs to be relevant to the student. So we took those findings and we started to think about how we could take these and put them into our classroom. And over the years, we started to investigate other things to help build a choice-based program. So in 16-17, we investigated differentiation and items in terms of personalized learning. And we started to look at more student-centered approach to learning. In 2017 and 18, we investigated choice-based learning and how to implement that. And at that time, we also started with Schoology. So we started to look at how we could use a blended classroom to better implement choice-based learning. And then in 1819, we fully implemented choice-based learning. I guess I shouldn't say fully. We started to implement choice-based learning. It's a evolving process that we're working on still. And now this year, we're starting to look at the assessment and how we can personalize the assessment for students. So we're looking at portfolios and reflection processes in order to do that. So where did our research come from? What were we looking at so that we could make these decisions about our program? The new National Art Standards came into play, and they took the focus off of just creating art and put it on to reflecting on students' work, into looking at how you present your work, and looking at how you make connections with other areas. We looked at choice-based art education, TAB, which is a type of choice-based art education. And then we thought studio habits of mind was how we were going to really form the foundation of our program. Other initiatives that were going on in the region that influenced us, maker spaces were starting at that time. Learning management systems, I already mentioned Schoology, and now we're into Google Classroom. How we implement the program is through those blended learning systems. Project-based learning, growth mindset, and self-directed learning. So further investigation, we went on some visitation to some schools that had implemented choice-based learning, and we found that choice-based learning was not the same in every classroom, was not the same in every district. At the National Art Education Conference, I visited different workshops and again found that everyone sort of tailors choice-based learning to their own style, to the students in their classroom, and to the lessons that they're teaching. And Jane went on a workshop over the summer to Lincoln Center where she learned more about inquiry-based learning process. So all of those things, again, go into our thinking for this program. So how do we start implementing it? In K2, Jane is building a foundation so that students could have pure choice. So she has more of a limited choice program there as she gets kids ready for choice. 3 to 5, she has fully implemented pure choice, or the TAB approach, which she'll talk about. And 6-12, we're developing choice-based activities throughout our lessons, and I'll again talk more about that. And we've always had pure choice, totally self-directed activities in honors and AP, so I will give you an overview of that when we get to there. So the studio habits of mind are kind of the foundation that we built the program on, and Jane's going to talk about those.
Hi, I'm Jane Manley. Nice to be here and talk to you about all this. This is really quite exciting for me. I find it remarkable because the students who I've been teaching have really blossomed into really wonderful artists and thinking like artists. And the studio habits of mind really provide that foundation, that format where students recognize the habits they have within the art room. Expressing, being able to talk about or come up with an idea and being able to get that idea out, understanding art worlds, basically making connections amongst themselves, artist to artist, or artist to famous artists out in the world. All these different studio habits are things that they actively do as they come into the art room and work as learners. They're very similar to the habits of mind that we've been talking about in our schools. So they're very recognizable. They're even applicable to what they do in their classroom when they're writing, for instance, making connections and framing ideas. It's very powerful. They're also very similar to our standards. They match our standards very nicely. I use these every day. My students recognize them. They identify these habits that they have. They will even notice the habits that other students have in their classroom. It's really quite interesting to see that process happen. Okay, I'm going to talk about how I came to do choice. Basically, it was a combination of things. The elementary schools incorporated maker spaces. And maker spaces, I'm sure you're familiar with because they've been talked about before, but they operate under the premise that students come in, they generate their own ideas, they gather materials, they follow through with a process of brainstorming, designing, making, testing, revamping, testing again, and essentially really just self-exploring their ideas. So that was happening. And meanwhile, at Burnham School, we had the blended classes happening. Well, I had a quandary. Here I had taught teacher-directed classes to K through 5, and all of a sudden I had these classes that were blended, and I was thinking to myself, well, I'm going to have students who have already done some projects. That presented a problem. I didn't want to reteach the same thing, so I started investigating and decided that, you know, there's got to be a different way to approach this. So in my research, I discovered teaching artistic behavior, or TAB, choice-based learning, and I realized as an artist myself that that's how I function. I don't like prescribed things. I like having an idea or a technique shown to me, and then I test it out and see if it works. And I just found that I got to learn about my students as artists when they have choices. So I put that all together, and basically I provide the students with a foundation. They get to test out different media. I teach them discrete lessons on, mini lessons on how to do a technique or how to use a certain kind of tool. They don't necessarily have to use that right away, but at least they have the information. And should they do want to do that thing that I've shown them, they have the opportunity to try it. They may or may not like it, but at least they've given it a try. The other thing that I've discovered is that the conferencing that I do with my students has been so interesting in that I get to really dig deep into what they're doing. And they're so excited to share what they're doing because they own it. It didn't come from me. I didn't direct them to do those things. They generated those ideas and they tried them out, and they're so eager to share their information. So for me, it's a very powerful thing to do. I have to warn you in advance. I have a little video here. It's very quiet. You do have it loud? Okay. Anyway, I have, my art shows are amazing, I have to say. Sorry, guys. I know your art shows are amazing too, but I have to also say that the students write about their art that's displayed. Each art piece has an artist statement to it. Obviously, kindergarten through second graders, you know, I help them with, I will scribe for them what they want to say about their artwork. But each piece has an artist statement, and kids walk around and they read the artist statements. They get information from each other just by those artist statements. It's really quite fun. All right, Donna, I'm going to try this. How do I make it go? Okay. Well,
I think choice is a good idea because it helps you move at the pace that you want to go at. Also, use whatever materials you need, and not just the specific ones for the lessons that the teacher is telling you.
What are you doing right now, Bella? What are you working on?
I am drawing a person that is running.
that is running. Okay, and what materials did you choose to use today?
I used a black Sharpie, markers, pencil, the mannequins,
Uh-huh.
color sticks, tracers, and texture palettes.
Nice. Cool. I'd be curious to see how you develop your picture. Great.
So that's just one example of one student in 4th grade who decided she was going to work in the drawing center. So I have a painting center, a sculpture center, the drawing center, collage. I do ceramic clay or clay, other types of clay, and printmaking. There's textiles as well. Some centers are pop-up centers. Not all, they're just temporary. Others are there for the whole year. But kids can move in and out of those centers as they see fit. And it's really pretty exciting. Thank you.
So our secondary approach continues to build on the studio habits, on inquiry-based learning, and on blended learning to allow for flexibility. We do have a little bit more direct instruction to improve media skills and techniques. Students at that level are ready for it, and they actually are more open to increasing their skills at that advanced level. So I wanted to bring you through a middle school lesson so you can kind of see how we teach the lesson, and then I wanted you to look at the different pieces of work that the students are creating. So this is the same lesson they're all getting, but if you look, they all have a different end product. So I had some skill builders in this lesson. I asked them, how do artists get inspired? And we looked at Piet Mondrian's work, and then we looked at several different styles of abstract work. And I asked them to try to figure out, because Piet Mondrian was sort of the father of abstract art, how did Piet Mondrian's work inspire these other abstract styles? So they're getting an idea of how you could look at someone else's work and then create something brand new. Then I talked about the element of balance with them, and they experimented and played with different types of printmaking. They made stamps, and we made some symmetry, some asymmetry, some radial symmetry, showed them how to make quadrilateral symmetry, and they sort of played with the idea of balance. And then our last skill builder was blending. So I showed them how to blend different media in all different, in all the different ways each media is blended. And they experimented with all the different media. Then we had play days after the skill building activities, where the students then take those skills and sort of creatively use them and sort of make their own style. So the play day here was printmaking. So I had 3 different centers, and at each center I put different printmaking materials, and the students move from center to center. We do this for 2 days. Usually the first day, they're not quite sure what to do. They're looking at each other. They're starting to get a little of that inspiration. And then the next class, we talk about where they found their inspiration, what they were looking at, what were they doing, and then they have another play day, and usually they develop some better ideas on that second day. And from there, then they create a finished work based on their play day activities. Excuse me. So their summative work is pretty much what they choose from their experimental day, how they want to take it forward. And I asked them to somehow show me balance in their work, show me some type of blended media, and then they have to, in their artist statement, talk about how they were influenced by someone or by the art history that we talked about, or whatever their influence is. So Linda's going to talk about a high school lesson.
So again, thank you. We're so excited to be here and kind of share all these things with you. It's been new to us. It's been a journey, but it's been exciting to see where the journey is leading us, and more importantly, the students and how they, interact with their artwork. So this is an introductory high school lesson. This actually spans a little bit more than just one unit, but basically what we do with photography is we start out with a lot of technical stuff, because there's a lot of technical aspects to photography and to photoshopping. So we learn technical, we learn shutter speed, we learn ISO, we learn all of that stuff. We learn composition. And what they've done is they've come through all of these things. And what we do is we intersperse little play days, like they were saying, into there where we do fun little things that they have to use these, for example, Photoshop skills, but they can make it fun for themselves. They can make it something that excites them, whereas we used to have it all the same, had to produce the same thing to show they knew these tools, you know, all these certain tools. So they get those play days in there, but then what happens is at the end, for example, the Phobia project, it's a narrative photography project, and it's open, it's completely free, it's completely choice-based in that they can use anything they've learned in photography, anything they've learned in Photoshop, anything they want to learn. They'll either come to me and we'll talk about how they can do that, or I'll have them look it up and start kind of self-learning a little bit if they're really excited about it. And we get just wonderful images that are just very narrative in nature, and they enjoy it a lot more. It's a lot more fun for them now to do these things and kind of just have that free range to be really creative and put their personality into it. It's about them now. It's not about what we want them to do. It's about what they want to do. And it's really been eye-opening on how it just excites them, and the quality of work we're getting is just amazing and exciting to see. So yeah, that's that part. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. No, no. Yes, we have a nice set of DSLRs we have. And so they're learning all the controls. They're learning aperture and shutter and manual, and we do eventually even go into the darkroom still. So we're using the whole range of photography.
So I just wanted to show you.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. When you say you're going into the darkroom, you're actually doing stuff on film, not just digital?
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
A whole set of analog cameras, and we have a full set of enlargers, and it's a great darkroom. The kids have fun in it, and it's just another step in the progression, and they enjoy it. It's fun to see their faces when the magic happens.
So I just wanted to go over the honors program and the AP program. So this has always been totally student directed. It's run more like an independent study. Excuse me. And we just had a brand new AP program begin this year. And when I looked at the program, we're actually doing what we need to be doing already. We don't really have to change anything, maybe some slight manipulation of some of the grading, the way we assess things. But we're doing exactly what we need to do for the new program. Students have to come up with some type of art problem and create a year-long inquiry into some kind of sustained investigation. So they choose some topic. The first picture, the girl is looking at weather, and she's creating art that sort of creates the different moods that you find in different weather conditions. And the second student is working on mark making and landscapes, and the third student is working on texture. So they research and experiment with ideas and materials and processes and come up with everything totally on their own. They implement that learning, and then they reflect and they refine their work throughout the process. So where are we headed? Kind of seeing where we are. We're going to continue to look at this continuum of how much choice you give and how much you limit the choice, and think about where we feel most comfortable. Again, I think that's just going to depend on the students you have in your class and the lessons that you're teaching at that moment. And we're going to just keep on learning and just keep improving the program as we go along. Yes?
How many students do you have in AP art? You know?
I have AP and honors at the same time. I think I have 8 AP students, and I think, I'm not exactly sure. I think I have probably about 7 honors students in that one class. Yeah.
Mary.
I wanted to commend our art department. You are bringing students into the school from Sherman. I know that because I know people that are looking at coming here because of our art department. So I want to tell you that, and that's very exciting. And I wanted to also say that Johanna Hayes' office was excited to have two of our kids have their artwork shown.
Yeah,
So
that was very exciting.
that was really great, and I was excited to see that.
Thank you.
We didn't get one, but we got 2 and 3. I love that.
There's 3
Thank you
places,
very
and we got
much.
2 out of 3. Yes.
I would also like to thank you. Obviously, this presentation highlights the possible careers and cultural benefits for the students. So, yeah, there's a lot of tie-ins with possible lifetime benefit.
Thank you.
Jen and then Mike.
So I do agree with Miss Manley. You do have a really fantastic art show. So I always love seeing your art shows. So they are amazing. But I also love over the last, I don't know what, maybe 4 years, maybe a little bit longer, the amount of artwork that's being displayed up at Chippewa as well. And I just feel like for me, it's really opened my eyes at how talented the students are here. And it does prompt me to go on to the website. And we've talked about this before, where you can see their AP portfolios. And I always encourage anybody to go on and see how amazingly talented the students are. And I just, whether they're AP and honors or whether they're not, when I see their displays, it just really inspires me and makes me just really excited. So thank you, all of you.
Yes, we have an art gallery on the website. So if you go on the high school website and you click on either the parent or the student tab, you can click on art gallery, and all the honor students and AP students have to build their own website and present their portfolios, and then all the other high school classes we do as one page. So you click on that page and you'll see all the student work. So you can, thank you.
I just wanted to second the thought of places to display the student work. I know that many different big events that Chippewa hosts, you have the whole mall set up, and so that people can kind of walk through and just really celebrate along with the artists and you. Such wonderful work. So that I really look forward to that. That's something I love every single year. But also just anywhere that you could think of to expand that, whether it's allowing students, a wall that they could make into a mural once every year, or having even more display cases. I know we've got some wonderful display cases for student trophies for athletics. I would love to see even more for art too.
We actually have really beautiful display cases out there. And when we do murals, if you look around the building, that's part of our art program each year. So.
Great. Yeah, the more the better. The question that I had for you too is there ever opportunities for you to work with colleagues to kind of promote the arts into other areas? For example, do you ever work with math teachers on where art and math can intersect? Do you work with science teachers on science and art? I'm just curious about that.
Don't personally work with them just because of the way the schedule works, but we do consult them. When I'm doing a lesson about balance, I want to find out what are the terms they're using in math class. When we're talking about trying to get water into clay, I want to use the correct scientific terms and talk about that. So we make sure that we make those connections in the classroom. But the schedule's not really flexible enough to get people aligned at the same time. So.
What about the elementary level? Is there more opportunities for that?
I always talk with my teacher peers. I try to find out what they're working on in social studies or in science, what are upcoming units that they may have. I talk to them even about their writing, because when I have students writing their artist statements, I want to be sure that I'm following the same kind of protocol in a way to really underscore what they're doing in their classroom, that it's applied in my art room. So there's a lot of back and forth. I make myself very available to my elementary teacher friends. and I get a lot of information from them. Prior to teaching art, I was an elementary teacher at Boothry School, and I've taught first grade through fifth a number of years ago, but it provided me with a nice foundation to understand the progression of development and how the curriculum articulates up through the grades. So, yeah, I have to say I've got the best job. I'm sorry, guys.
No. And that is true also for when we have our students do research. We're often working closely with how the other courses ask their students to do research and citing and all that stuff. So we do try to bring that in to make it consistent and reinforce the learning from other departments.
Alex.
I have more of a technical question. I mean, there are only so many hours in a day, and you hear a lot about art and music being cut from curriculum to make room for history and math and science. How much time do your kids get to spend in a week? And do all the kids take art?
So K-5 has art once a week.
Once a week, yep.
For how long? Hour?
For an hour. The kindergartners have a shortened art class. Their attention is a lot smaller. About 40 minutes, 45 minutes for kindergarten, and then first grade through 5 have an hour once a week. And I remind them that it's a privilege to have art for an hour. They only get it for an hour, and they should make it really a good hour. So.
So
And in the middle
sixth
school,
through eighth grade has every other day for half a year. So it's a semester, one quarter of art.
And all students take that.
6th through 8th, yes. And then in high school, it's an elective. So students could take 4 years of art, or they could take none. They could take
Thank
music instead.
Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you very much. I think we have an outstanding art program in this district. I'm so happy that we have photography at the high school. I had the privilege of being at the ASAP thing this weekend, where we saw quite a few Chapag students. Of the more than 400 students who submitted works, only a few were chosen to be displayed the other day, and there were 4 Chapag students who had their work there. And you really see tremendous abilities that come out. You see excellent composition. You see the ability to capture and use light in unique ways. It's just fascinating stuff, and I urge you to keep doing it and keep these art displays up in the school, as many as you can get here. It's just wonderful to see it. So thank you so much, and this is a fascinating program. Absolutely is.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Yep. Lori Travato, this is AgriScience Marketing and Program Update. We're looking forward to it.
Hi, everybody. Good. So we're here tonight to give you some updates on AgriScience, and it's been an exciting start to our year. We have just completed all of our schools that we've visited, and as you can see, there's many listed up there. I won't read the list to you, but we had 2 today at Broadview Middle School in Danbury. That wrapped us up for this fall's presentations of their recruitment efforts. And they actually had school counselors reached back out to me asking to include 7th grade. They felt that it was imperative that the 7th graders be exposed earlier. So I started getting phone calls. So we started adding in the 7th grade aspect to the recruitment. They felt that they really needed that. So I'm going to go into talking about some different aspects of our pathways and what we've been exploring as everything starts to get revealed to us, or released to us, should I say. And for example, in our food pathways, the students are looking into our businesses like Chapag Microgreens and food products. So with the new kitchen, that's absolutely spectacular. The students are now getting to delve in and explore what it means to actually be part of this world and actually crosswalk into the plant science into the greenhouse, because right now we have an opportunity with the greenhouse getting turned over to actually have the students be able to grow the product that's going to be used in the food kitchen. So really exciting time for us for what is transpiring for the students. So if you can see in this picture right here, one of our students is using eggs from one of our agri-science teachers who actually produces some eggs, and she's learning about the process of how important it is to actually clean the bacteria from the eggs before actually we utilize them in the kitchen. So with plant science, I'm ecstatic actually because of the new greenhouse technology that's in there. And we have just started to implement and plant the seeds in the greenhouse. Students are now designing their own agri-science experiments and choice for food consumption for humans and or our animals that we're going to have on campus. So part of the new planning for the greenhouse is for them to actually start to understand what the seed software is, what it controls, and so they can actually take the reins of that and be able to explore that. The Honors Challenge experiments are completely choice-based as well. They actually are designed by the students within the Honors Challenge, and they transition through both semesters. And we have students that are actually designing projects for use in the greenhouse right now. So that is actually going to take place when they actually transition in spring to April for the Agri-Science Experiment Station, where they could actually show in the Honors Challenge what their work was in that situation. The power structure and technical students, they're going to get to explore the greenhouse environment and actually look at how that all operates as well with helping with irrigation. So looking at how the benches are laid out, how we could make some innovative product that they actually design and put in there. So we have some engineers, of course, just like I was telling you about how they can actually look into what are aspects of the other areas of agri-science are and begin to actually explore. So not only do they have to stay in the shop, which is absolutely spectacular, but they can take and explore the other areas of agri-science in order to take that back into the shop and actually utilize the equipment to enhance our program in the other content areas, such as the plant systems and the animal systems. So it's pretty remarkable that we have this special opportunity that these students are actually getting to look into in order to develop their world around them, quite literally. Oops, excuse me, sorry about that. So in the animal science world, in-house we have some little pocket pet / companion animals, and we are growing them as we speak. And the students are learning about the habitats and sanitation and control and how the animals interact with people and how important it is to actually look at the care and handling of those animals. The students are actually looking at how they're going to be designing the habitats and what makes the most sense and how we can improve them as the years go on to make it really a more a comfortable environment for the students. So move from cage to potentially like a true habitat, like you would see in a zoo type of a scenario. So we're pretty excited about the students' involvement because really the students need to have voice. And this is in all aspects of this arena, including the plants, the animals, the food, and the power structure and technical. The students really truly have a voice. And I think that's really awesome because they actually can help to forge what's happening within this environment. So as you may know the agri-science model is a three-circle model, including their independent study work or shadowing, and also the leadership piece, which is the FFA. And interweaved into their curriculum, every single week we have a part of leadership, which is part of that life skill that is so important to their learning in going on to upper classes and college and career. So, and the importance of being involved in that school and community, being involved at Topland Farms and doing the tractor events and giving back and being part of that world. It's much more than just rote data. It's about those other soft skills that are really important that those students are forging, from everything from just a handshake all the way up to building their resume, talking in public, doing these presentations such as the other night when we had our event, our 8th grade night, being in the rooms and exploring with the parents that are coming to visit us. The students are talking. And it's not us just talking. It's them sharing their experiences. And that's what they're learning within the FFA model, which I think is something that they'll use their entire life. So again, Chippewa Blooms, Chippewa Microgreens, and their food products are all going to be part of what they develop in order to have that agribusiness model as we move forward in this program. So we have some upcoming events and recently passed. On Friday, I brought students to UConn, and they competed along with the entire state of Connecticut in competition, and they did a menagerie of events that were aligned to things that they would see in the UConn model. UConn professors and their staff helped put this together along with the agri-science teachers in the state. And then on November 22nd at the Ag Experiment Station, they will compete again in forestry in the natural resources realm. So we are growing in the curriculum development events, and then there's other ones in the spring, which we'll share with you at a later date. And then we have an agri-science board meeting. We have 3 a year, and our next one is December 4th, which is right after Thanksgiving. And of course, our e-marketing. So if you haven't already done so, our 3 Chippewa Agri-Science places, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are up and running, and we post on there. We try to post something on a regular basis to make sure that people get to see what cool stuff our students are doing. Any questions? Yes, I saw your hand first.
I forget the first question I was going to ask you, but
you can ask the second one then.
People see the large animal barn going up.
Yes.
Can you say, maybe I should know, but I don't know. I don't know if you're at liberty to say or if you know. What are the plans as far as how many horses, cows do you ultimately plan to have in there?
So we actually submitted a timeline plan to Superintendent Bennett, and we're working with different schools in order to facilitate. We are working on what makes sense right now to be in there with the amount of students that we have on board. So that's a work in progress at the moment.
All right.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Julie?
Laura, I know we talked about this a little bit last meeting, but are there students now going to the presentations to the 8th grade classes, or is it just you, or who actually is giving the presentations for potential incoming students?
You mean to the 8th graders in the other district areas?
Yes.
The
Yep.
sending towns? So I've been visiting all the schools myself. We did have interest from our student body to go. We did have one student start to go with us. She went to the Emmanuel Lutheran School. And in the future, I definitely plan, once students have more experience and they can talk from an organic sense about the program, we're going to look at bringing them as well. That's something that's traditionally done, and bringing the students is something that is really a great part because the students get to talk to the other students. So Emmanuel Lutheran's event was extremely, I think, beneficial to have her there because the students were going up to her afterwards and speaking with her and asking her some questions. So that went very, very well. And she's only had a couple months experience. She actually is an out of district student.
Okay, great. Sounds like we're on the right track there. Thanks.
I think so. Yes.
Laura, if you could just give us a quick overview of what's new in terms of recruitment this year. I know you mentioned perhaps talking to seventh graders. I know
Yes.
you mentioned Emmanuel Lutheran. Is that a new school that you added to the list?
It is a new school added to the list. We actually had last year a student apply from Emmanuel Lutheran, and that was part of the discussion about, okay, what other avenues, maybe the students aren't even knowing that agri-science exists out there. So we did go and we visited. That was a brand new school this year, and actually last week when we had our event, we saw at least 3 families from that school were here from Emmanuel Lutheran, and they toured the facilities with us. So that was very beneficial, and we're going to be looking into other private schools as well. And we have had conversation with and constant communication with a couple other private schools in the area.
The other question I had too had to do, you mentioned that the idea of incorporating students into the recruitment process and
Yes.
in the future, which I think is a wonderful idea. But I'm wondering if you have any ideas of how you might form parents of agri-science students, maybe somehow incorporating them somewhere into the recruitment process too?
That's a great idea. That we have the Parents, Friends, and Alumni group that's been formed, and we have our consulting committee, which there may be some overlay there with those parents that are on the FFA Parents, Friends, and Alumni group. Not that we have really alumni yet, but there's alumni of the school, so it makes sense we're going to be there. So that's something that would be very good to have at different events. We have actually invited some of the members of the groups to come speak before. So having them actually go and share their experiences with their students as the years progress, I think would be really great, because then they can speak to their knowledge of having their student in the program and their experience. Because coming from an agri-science background, from an established program that was in business for a long time, the agri-science parents become truly part of our world on an ongoing basis, and they can talk from their own experiences from going on convention, going to trips with us out west.
And I know since they choose the school, they tend to be bigger cheerleaders than maybe even the normal parent, which I think is fantastic to utilize that energy and enthusiasm.
I have to tell you, like when we did the tractor parade, we had parents from Danbury drive up early in the morning, an hour before the event was happening, and help us. And that's commitment. And they were thanking us for having this program here. So it's good stuff.
Alex?
Will the students be there on Saturday?
So we've sent out invitations to all of our students to be there on Saturday, and we plan on having them there.
Great.
Julie?
Yes, Julie.
Is the list of the Agri-Science Advisory Board on our website?
I've shared it with Superintendent Bennett. I don't know that it's on the website. I don't know. It's got a lot of personal information on there, so I would have to have a conversation.
I think it would be nice, at least for board members, to know who's on it.
Sure.
Thanks.
I'll have a conversation with Superintendent Bennett afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Yes, John.
Yeah, it's good to hear that UConn has events, and I imagine those topics change from year to year. Or?
So the University of Connecticut, they actually rotate different competition. There's actually a 4-year rotation in different events. The competition involves everything from agri-science to poultry and meat evaluation and milk evaluation, of course, the plant sciences. So the competition is sort of set to the standard of what they would be learning at that level and then up to the UConn's level, but they do rotate the practicums out. So they will change from year to year what practicum is given. For example, 1 year may be a pest identification and problem solving, whereas the next year they'll actually look at some cultural issues with the plants. So things can change, but the consistent standard stays the same on the same level. But the professors are involved, which is really wonderful because they actually use plant samples that they actually keep in their own greenhouses and bring it down to campus into the Radcliffe Hicks ring and set it up themselves before we even get there. So everything is a collaboration with UConn. Yeah, it's really wonderful. Michael.
Just on that note, as a UConn alum, I'm very proud of the fact that you're fostering that relationship. So
Go UConn.
go Huskies. But I'm also wondering if there are any thoughts about expanding to other Connecticut schools. For example, Yale has a School of Forestry and Environmental Studies.
They do.
So, that might be a great area to kind of introduce our kids that, it's not just our land grant university that has a program. There are many private universities too that have
Absolutely.
programs that might interest them.
Yeah, I actually, there was a professor that we've reached out to that was very interested in being involved with our committee, our consulting committee, who's involved with Yale. So we've been in conversation with him. He's not in forestry, he's more into the computer analytics with the plant systems and genomes. So, but that doesn't mean we can't make a connection there with the forestry as well. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Lori. All right, at this time, I will ask if there is any public comment on agenda items. Any member of the public has a comment? Don't see too many. All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone would like to take off the consent agenda in terms of minutes? Okay, and second readings. So are there any second readings anyone would like to revisit? All right, then that consent agenda stands and those items are adopted and passed. We'll move on to reports. I guess I'm up first. We have got a lot going on. We're excited with the fact that we have gotten a temporary CO, a TCO on Building A, which of course is the shops, and those are now being filled up with furniture and whatnot, and that's an exciting prospect. And the construction project is moving quite along. O&G is now out of their trailer, and that's being removed from the site tomorrow, and they're actually operating right out of our building. So as you can see, things are going. I'll have a little bit more on my report later. I wanted to talk about Mark Peters, our world history ECE AP teacher. ECA is early college experience, and Mark was recognized last year by UConn for his excellence in instruction. He's been advocating the Connecticut Department of Public Education to put the value of UConn's ECE program on par with the AP program when formulating the accountability index. And we hope this will create new opportunities for our students. As a board, we've expanded our ECA program and increased the number of students accessing college-level opportunity at Chapag, and I think this is really critical, either in the way of making college more affordable for some people, but also in expanding the opportunities at universities. So I think this is an outstanding thing. And fortunately, we have Mark Peters here, and he is a leader in this area. So I think that's important. We're having our community open house and tour of Chapag on Saturday, this Saturday, November 23rd, from 9 to 11 a.m. We sort of gave ourselves an additional week to allow for the furniture to come in and be able to be placed, but things are going to be pretty good. We're going to confine the tours to the building itself. We're not going to have people running across to Building F simply because we need hard hats and they need to be wearing stout shoes over there because there's all kinds of stuff on the floor that's still under construction. Same thing with the chemistry labs. We wouldn't want people in there without hard hats. But we're going to have it's the rest of the project will be here available for people to see. I believe probably in the front mall, in the mall here, right in the front, which is where people I think mostly will come in. So that's where to meet, and then we'll take the tours off from there. As you know, as part of AgSTEM, the AgSTEM buildings and expansion of the site took over one of our athletic fields, and so the athletic director had requested another field, And our AgSTEM program is replacing that field with another soccer field up in the far northwest corner of the site. Unfortunately, though, in order to do that soccer field, we had to put both fields under construction. And those fields have now been, are now moving along. But the way this was originally designed, you need 2 seasons of growing before you can really play on a field. And we expected to have the field seeded this fall, and that our 2 seasons would be this fall and then next spring, and we'd be on the fields in the fall of 2020. Unfortunately, when they were doing when they were expanding the athletic fields, they discovered that there was some ledge up there. And that ledge had to be removed and a drainage system designed and installed. And the delays pushed the seeding past viability. We're not seeding, we're not planting any seeds now because it's too late. It's too cold for any of the stuff to germinate. So we've now lost a season, and we're not going to really have access to the fields until the spring of 2021. And as a result, the landscaping company is helping us with this. We're going to be rehabilitating one of the fields at Washington Primary School. There's sort of like a trench or a dip in one of the soccer fields. That's going to be filled in with some of the enormous quantities of beautiful topsoil we have here. That's going to be taken over, and that field's going to be laid out, so we'll be able to make better use of those fields on a temporary basis until we've got this field going. I do have, if you want to see after the meeting, I do have some aerial shots of what it looks like. The O&G has a drone that they send up, and they take aerial photos of the project. And so I do have some of those if you'd like to see them. Yes?
Is there ever, we've talked about how we, talked about joining forces sometimes with classrooms, with Gunnery and other schools, but they have that soccer field literally on South Street that they don't use a lot. And would that ever be a consideration to be able to share that with them?
Well, it's a great idea.
I'd never see anybody there because they're always using the one that's on Woodbury Road. I just think that it's so close to home. Why not explore it?
Well, I think we certainly could. If
I know that the gunnery uses the town properties on occasion. So.
But I just think it's an opportunity if it's so close to home to at least ask.
Well, I think we'll definitely keep that arrow in the quiver. I know that Matt Parachi has, I believe, feels confident he has the fields he needs to get us through this little patch. But at the end of the day, we're going to have 2 wonderful soccer fields up there. And I think it'll be a great addition to the school. And this is a nice a nice partnership as we go over and work with the town of Washington and use those fields. I think it's a wonderful thing. So that I think is where that is. Also, I want to congratulate our photographers here that were honored by ASAP yesterday. Chippewa was represented. This was a competition sort of event in which over 400 people. Last year it was it was like 100 and something, and this year it was 400 students submitted work for judging by professional photographers, and it was a juried show. And these came from, I believe they said, 52 schools. And Chippewa had 4 students in the much smaller number of works that were found to be for display at this event, and that's Julie Sinatra, Gray Pomeroy, Lane Faison, and Annabelle Church. I've got to say their works were outstanding. We're looking at really professional level stuff here. Really, the way they captured their subjects, the light, was just absolutely so proud to be there and to be there with the superintendent and representing Chippewa, and to just see our kids up there. And it was just an absolutely wonderful event, and we should be very proud of our kids. They are very talented, and we fought hard to make sure that our budget kept our photography program alive last year, and I think this is another example of just the what we've reaped in terms of the experience that these kids have. So again, it was a a really wonderful event, and we're so proud of them. All right, I think that's my report. So go on to Megan. Oh, that would help. I can do it.
Oh, we're destroying things over here. Oh, all right.
No, it's been taped.
Okay. Well, regardless. All right. We have been very busy since we last met. I do want to thank Lisa, Mary, and Greg for taking time out of your schedule to join me at the Cape CAPS conference, and so well represented, and just so proud in being able to network. I think we saw the value of talking to some of the colleagues, and even when we're going to get into some of the policies today, being able to have some of those other people who've tried, we'll get to the student representatives, and hearing from other people who have used and have those conversations, I think only helps strengthen our work that we're doing here. So, and thank you for taking your time. I do want to acknowledge we are doing an extensive amount of work with, we have Audley Donaldson and Paul Vivian, who are working with us on a diversity and tolerance project that we're working with, not just with the teachers, but also at Chippewa and with our 4th and 5th graders at the elementary schools. And one of the things that is absolutely wonderful about this is not sparked because something has happened. There has not been an event in which I can say that there has been intolerance shown, but rather this is our opportunity to open up conversations about diversity. We have students who are coming because diversity is not just about skin color or creed or sexual preference. It's also a lot about where you're from. It's about acknowledging that sometimes even within our tiny little bubble, we do have diversity and we have diverse thoughts. And they have been guiding us through the conversation to understand inherent biases that you may have, recognizing that and making certain you're not acting on that. And additionally, to say that they do this in such a developmentally appropriate way. So with our elementary students, they start talking about creating a salad. And they start them with lettuce, and then they add all kinds of things to the salad. And then they start taking away the things from the salad. So no longer can you have croutons. And what you start to realize is that without having some of those textures in your salad, without having some things that are going to create challenge to your palate, it's not as good of a salad. And so that same thing in introducing different thoughts into the community makes us stronger. But again, doing it in a way that is so developmentally appropriate, not judgmental. Inviting the conversations really has been absolutely wonderful. And even the teachers, after their presentation, came up to me and said, we loved them. It wasn't preachy. This was the best diversity conversation we had because we actually had to explore ourselves. And again, not in a way that came off as judgmental, but as a self-awareness conversation. So they will continue to work with us throughout the year, but I wanted to bring to the board's attention that this work is being done. And again, it's about acceptance and not a reaction to something. So, additionally, I do want to thank the town of Washington, specifically the campaigns of Jim Brenton and Michelle Gora. They allowed our AP government students, under the guidance of Chris Dennis, to learn from their campaigns. And so they worked with Republican Party, they worked with Democratic parties, and nobody was trying to sway anybody's political ideologies, but rather an opportunity to learn from that local political level. And I have to thank our candidates because they did so in such a positive and informative method that it really opened up our students' eyes that sometimes what's happening on the national level, that it's not as toxic sometimes. And it's something that we really want them to recognize what is their civic responsibility. And speaking of some wonderful things also that I do want to bring to this board's attention is the fact that we were looking to do something nice for the Washington volunteer firefighters because them doing the fire walks, responding to some alarms that have been going off at random hours and looking to do something that we could do. And they said they didn't want any snacks at their next meeting. They didn't want any acknowledgement. They asked that we use our voice in order to promote a family who was in need in the community. And it's just something that I felt just should be brought to the attention that this is really community helping community. And I just, we did promote the event that they had asked, but it's also one to say, again, it's just continuing to show how selfless they have been throughout this whole process. So also, as we continue to talk about awareness of our communities and world awareness, Chippewa helped celebrate the World Polio Day. This was schools and organizations across our community. They raised awareness. They got to wear pajamas before they had their homecoming the next day. But a special thanks to the Rotary Club for coordinating and raising this awareness. We joined our counterparts at Rumsey as well as Gunnery, so it was really bringing all of the local schools and helping out with World Polio Day. I also want to congratulate Fran Bellison and the entire Chippewa debate team. That we welcomed 150 students here on Saturday from 13 schools to debate about some very current and relevant topics. And the students, their thirst for debate continued even into lunch as they were debating with Mr. Croft, who was handing them the pizza, and continued to debate with Julie King as she was giving them their sodas. They were so enthusiastic about the process and what happened. And again, our students who had their Chippewa debate shirts on, it was just a wonderful example. One, we get to showcase to schools near and far the wonderful environment that happens here at Chippewa. Our students get to elevate their thinking to the next level. And again, just watching the camaraderie happen with teams, even when they're not athletic, is just outstanding for our students. Additionally, we had Booth Free had celebrated their Peace Pole ceremony, bringing awareness to our students in hopes that we have peace prevail on earth. That was something that started at Burnham and we're continuing to spread. But Washington and Burnham have been working with the Ben Bells Project and continue to push the message of kindness to our students. Almost done. For athletics, I do want to inform you, we have the opportunity to host some of the games of the Berkshire League basketball tournament, which again, and I think this is where, Alex, you had mentioned, we've got to get foot traffic into our school. And so all of these opportunities that start to invite themselves, we are happy to host right now, really getting people to see, they're coming in for a reason, but we like to have them ooh and ah while they're here. Additionally, we had our Chippewa Middle School cross-country team compete at the Connecticut Middle School Championships. That happened on November 2nd in Wickham Park in Manchester. I am proud that we had 4 students in the top 50. And so congratulations to Lexi Thomas, who is a 6th grader, Hunter Brown, an 8th grader, AJ Conrad, an 8th grader, and Ethan Denning actually made it to the top 10. So congratulations to our speedy middle school students. And as you're all sitting here thinking, what can I do this weekend? I know I'm scheduled to come to a tour, and that's great for the morning, but what can I do for my evenings? Our Chippewa Drama Club will be performing Outward Bound, which is a hauntingly funny and entertaining play. And if you want to get some of the details around this, Ben has been directing our play for us. So not only does he go from behind here making certain we're using our microphones, he goes to make certain that they do that on the stage as well. But to say to you, we are excited to have another presentation. It is Friday and Saturday, Sunday too, Ben? And Sunday too. So mark your calendars. We can certainly fill you with some entertainment. Ben, that's line? 7 p.m. on Saturday. I don't want to leave it up to yourself, but we can certainly give you how to go to Washington, explore Washington, so that way you don't have to travel so much to those other towns. But I tease. I think that when we look at, again, this has been a showcase of not just that we are about, we have the agri-science program, we have the arts. All of these things are being showcased again and again, and so very proud. Yes.
Actually, you were joking, but I think you could go explore Washington because the young photographers that won the ASAP award, the program was at the town hall in Washington, but they're actually going to be up in the gallery. What's the name? The Judy Black Gallery, the newest art gallery in town in the Depot, and I think it's going to be up for 2 weeks. So if anybody wants to go check it out, you can see all of our work there.
And not to bias the other two towns, you can certainly go to Bridgewater Cafe, you know. Okay. So moving on, I also have just some notifications to the board. We do have a field trip. The Radio City Music Hall in New York will be happening on December 11th for grades 9 through 12. Again, this is a notification because they will be traveling out of state to New York. And then also, I just wanted to let you know, we did have a slight date change when the students are going to Quebec. Originally, we had it from the 6th to the 10th. It's going to be the 6th through the 9th. So I just wanted to make certain that we reflected the adjustment, so they'll come back a little sooner. And as personnel, we do have an appointment of Miss Melissa Fay, the paraprofessional at Booth Free. Melissa will be taking the position. We lost a paraprofessional at Booth Free, Miss Amy Stoltz, and so we had a hard time. We wanted to make certain we replaced with that very special person. We know how amazing Amy was, and so we certainly hunted far and wide and very proud to invite Melissa Fay to join us at that school.
Thank you. You reminded me of something that I had forgotten to mention in my report, which I wanted to talk about. If you recall, a while back, we decided to propose an initiative for CABE to take to the legislature. And that initiative was we asked CABE to urge the state to equally fund all of their school choice programs. School choice programs are charter, magnet, agri-science, and technical schools. And so that was our item, and it was not recommended for approval by the committee that looked at it, but we got our chance on the floor, and we made the best effort we could. But I'll tell you what hung us up, and we didn't get it. What hung us up is the fact that we were asking for equal funding of these programs, and there just was a lot of resistance to more money going to charter schools, even though these are public charter schools. And so as a result, we kind of went up on those rocks, but it appears that we were at the point where I thought we had it. I thought we had the room. But unfortunately, when someone raised that issue, it kind of killed it. And then we tried several times to amend it on the fly, but what was obvious to me is we need to go back, take another look at it, come up with a slightly better worded thing that will politically fly through the environment there. And I think we have a choice of doing that. The idea was we were trying to get the state to fund the whole $11,000 that AgSTEM gets rather than the towns having to fund any part of it. And this would sort of eliminate the need for things like caps and whatnot. And so the idea was that towns would not have to think, gee, can we afford to send this many kids? And I think we have a real shot at it. We just, at least to get CABE behind it. We didn't this time, and now we know the politics of it. I think we'll have a better shot next time. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, Treasurer's report.
Yes, and this report is actually probably, if I saw the quarterly or the monthly snapshot today, I would probably have a different report. But this is based on the month end 9/30, and also that summary also coincides with the quarterly report. So when I investigated, exactly what to tell you about, my mind went toward the items that were over budget or under budget, and I couldn't the report would take too long to tell you about each line item, but there were 7 items, especially under the personnel and salaries part of the budget that were over budget, and that was mostly due to staffing, shifts, resignations, and retirements. But that is also subject to change as time goes on. There was also something interesting in the 200s section of the budget, employee benefits. And when I talked to Nicole, she informed me that she and the business office is looking into, has been auditing and examining the different group health insurance plans and their premiums. And this, in my mind, was a huge undertaking, and there's a lot of, a lot of moving parts, and there's not only within that, there's different plans for the different bargaining units. So she has taken a look, and she continues to look at it, and indicated that there will be savings upon the completion of the review, and at that point, a more accurate projection as to what encumbrances will be on that portion of the budget. In a few days from now, the quarterly report will be sent to the towns, and it's also going to be published on the Region 12 website, which I think is really a good idea, because I also think back to the days long before I even dreamed about becoming a board member. I always, got my blood pressure up wrestling with why and what for, and so I think, it's good for the public to have the opportunity to see exactly where the dollars and cents are going. Is it going to be a line item, or just the code summaries?
The direction that we've received from the state about this new requirement is that we should post whatever is shared with the board.
Okay. Also, on a positive note, I don't know how many of the board members are aware that there are accounts within the especially from the revenues and the ag construction account that generates interest, and we make money on the money retained in those accounts. And even though eventually they're going to get paid out, there's 7 accounts that have earned in this quarter $30,201. So the largest account, which is the ag building account, that money, that interest earned, can only be used for ag construction projects. But other than that, it's good to see that we are making money on money sitting there basically idle for a month or 2 or 6. Other than that, any questions?
John, that money that you mentioned that we're earning, that has to go towards ag construction, does it have to be construction that we're undertaking right now? Or could we use it, let's say, 5 years from now, if there's something that we determined that we needed to do?
I don't think 5 years from now. It's just related to what's going on now, correct?
So it doesn't specifically have to be used for construction. It does have to be used for the project. So one good thing that can come out of that is we have a lot of furniture, fixtures, and equipment that the state deemed ineligible. So we can use that interest toward the purchase of those items because they're part of the project.
And I was going to say, we spent it tonight at the building committee meeting,
Oh, you
so.
did?
No, not really. Not really. Okay, John, thank you very much. Going to move on to committee reports. We'll start with Mary. CABE.
Well, I went to the Cape Convention and I had a great time. One of the things that I had spoke about before was it used to be in Waterbury and we used to all go. And one of the things that I think the four of us found is that it's a lot of fun to go and really meet each other and laugh together and tell stories together. I advise you to all go next year because it's something that working together, it builds that. And it makes it much easier to work together when you know the people. I mean, I know some of the people on the board better than I know others. And I'd like to know everybody. And it's a great opportunity to do that. So I would advise you all to go. There was a lot of very interesting information that I've gotten from the Cape Convention. They always have a great keynote speaker at the beginning. Dr. Gay was fabulous. He was just but I've seen some really other people that were really fabulous too. So they really get people that are very interesting and exciting, I would say too. I went to a few presentations that Megan and Greg and Lisa didn't go to. One of the things that I went to was from Naugatuck, and they had a presentation about their diversity and what they're doing, and I thought that was a great program that they were going through. Also, I went to another one, the State Board of Education, and one of the things that many of you know and many of you don't know is that I'm a dental hygienist, so I am a healthcare professional. And one of the things that interested me most was to come, when I came on the Board of Education, I asked Megan about our immunization policy. That's very important to me. And so the CABE is going to push for the fact that we will no longer have religious exemptions for immunizations. It will only be medical exemptions. And I've been asked to testify. You see, I took an oath of office here to do the best for our kids. I also took another oath when I became a hygienist to do the best for society and do the best that I could as a dental hygienist. And I took them both seriously, and so that's why I want to go and testify for them. So I look forward to talking to you about that. The other thing that was great at the luncheon at the end, they had a panel of 4 students that were representatives to the board, and they were terrific. They were asked some questions, and their answers were interesting. One of the things that I was telling them about in the education committee meeting is that the first thing that they were asked was, what is the best thing about school? And they all said extracurricular activities. The other thing that they said was a problem was that they don't have enough time in the day. And one girl was saying she gets 2 hours of sleep a night. And that's something that I felt sad for them. And I said, this is not something that we want to do with our kids. We don't want to make them so they have to always be on. They all said it was very stressful. So that was something that I was interested in hearing. And I thought, because we will have students on our Board of Education, I thought that will be interesting to hear what they have to say about our own schools. So this is some of the stuff that I learned, and I advise you to please come next year. We can all laugh together. We're pretty fun people, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Curriculum and educational programming, Michael.
So this evening, we talked about some policies that you'll probably see in the near future. But our main focus was really talking a little bit about scheduling, and what the district is planning as far as looking at our current schedule, what some of the rationale would be for making any kind of a schedule change. And so that took up the bulk of our conversation. But we're going to be starting apparently this spring with kind of the investigation phase where we're looking at other schools in the area and what they offer in terms of different schedule configurations and what the pros and cons of the different schedules would be.
Thank you, Michael. Finance and operations, Alex.
I don't have a lot to report. We have a meeting on the 2nd of December. What we are focusing on is putting together and finishing the list of capital issues that need to be dealt with. Don, who was here momentarily, has done some further research on that, and he told me tonight he has more numbers to share, and I'll get them out to the committee when he gets them to me for windows and things of that nature. Other than that, that's really what we focused on, and some policies which we passed tonight in the on the agenda. I would be more than willing to take questions if anybody's got questions about the operations or the finances. Seeing
Questions?
none,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Jim, labor negotiations.
The board has started negotiations with our teachers union. We've had our first meeting. Our next meeting is December 5th. That's really all I can say. We've had an initial meeting and we are in the process of negotiating with the teachers.
Thank you, Jim. Strategic long-range planning, Julie.
Okay, we had a meeting on November 4th, and it was actually sort of exciting and fun. We had Jen and Lisa, Pete, myself, and Megan, and Mike Croft joined us as well. We started sort of reviewing the goals that we sort of drafted, and they're still in a very drafty state. But given the seriousness of marketing, which we sort of got sidetracked in a good way, we focused most of our time on that. And Mike actually had some great recommendations from his past service. And as a result of that conversation, Megan and I believe Mike met with a woman named Janet Carlson, who is the CEO of a marketing group called 111 Group, and they're out of West Cornwall. Mike had worked with that group in his previous position, and they're going to give us a proposal. And it sounds very promising. So we'll have more to hear about that soon. And then I don't know, Megan, if you want to talk about niche at all?
Yes. Based on the conversations with the long-range planning and recognizing our need to promote it through various forms, niche, we rank very high. #1 school in Litchfield, #1 school district, best place to work in Litchfield County. Recognizing that's really nice to parlay, and they will market us as such. And what they really advertise is not only are they working for just showcasing districts, when people are going looking at real estate, it is a site that can be found off of that. And they will personalize our site on there, so that way it's one-stop shopping. The less that we have people trying to chase our information, so they will house some of our content. They will personalize it, so that way anybody who's interested in buying locally will see some of the things that we have to showcase, and it'll be right there for them, including our test scores, including the opportunities at Chippewa, including our rankings, and they will also do things like where our name is placed amongst the other local schools, so that way we don't fall down beneath some of our other choices. We fall within contention with the, with right alongside. So through that conversation, it really came down to, because long range planning, as we're starting to think about it differently, reaching out to Niche was just seemed like a natural step.
Yeah, one final comment. If anyone's interested in looking at the website, it's 111-group.com, and it's really a quite interesting website. They haven't worked with a lot of schools, mostly healthcare, but they seem very good, so I think it's definitely worth pursuing. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Okay, we'll move on to new business and updates. The AgriScience update, program status. Megan.
Well, I'm not going to be redundant. I think Lori did a lot of work talking to you about our recruiting. I am very proud to say we have 3 applications right now. Our applications are not even due, and we typically don't see them till closer to Christmas break. So to say that we are very excited about the opportunities to educate more students. But Lori alluded to the fact of a large animal plan. We are having the conversation right now. We have our 3 agri-science teachers, and all of them have specialties. We really are looking for that large animal specialist. They all have the ability to, they all can work with, can work with animals. But we were also talking about developing that idea of a Shipahog farm. So having the farm and having the education program. And so that's something we're teasing out right now. But the things that we are currently doing with our agri-science plans, one of our agri-science students is actually building the chicken coop for us. So we will have chickens right after Thanksgiving. A special thank you to Curtis Reed, who has really educated me on sheep and some things that we have to know, and some pitfalls you can easily fall into. But it's also important that we have the opportunity to actually pick out our sheep and to really have it where we get to walk through the process of identifying who's the ram that we prefer and the sheep, and then to wait. And then when we have the lamb, we can really build that excitement of what's going to come onto campus. The conversation has been about horses and when those are coming on. I have learned throughout all of this, horses are really temperamental animals, really temperamental. And there's like an oddly specific age you want, like I think it was 14 to 17. Like there's a sweet spot, I'm told. But to say that what we are recognizing is they are also social animals. So the question of will you have 1, will you have 2, we know we have to have at least 2. We know that we have to be selective. This is not just about the donation. Like,
Just a question. Are you talking about our students or are you talking about horses?
we all can be social creatures. But it's to say that while we're looking at those things, we are recognizing that how we're bringing animals on campus, with those relationships we have with our advisory council, we also are being very cautious. We don't want to have animals come on that may have any kind of disease that then we're spreading to other farms. So there is the period in which we're working with our veterinarians to make certain that we have healthy animals coming on. We want to have that trusting relationship. We're also working with our local agri-science programs and using some of their animals that we know have already gone through some of those time-tested, they've been vet-checked, they are good with animals. And so to know that we're creating some of those partnerships that way as well, we're working through some of the challenges, but I think at some point the conversation is going to come if we need to have a farmer that's working with us here on campus and doing something where really we build our farm. I think when we're working with a lot of these agri-science programs, they have been around for 50 plus years. We have to allow ourselves the opportunity to have Shipahog Farm and to have the education program that's being developed. And so as that plan is developing, teasing, I will keep the board right alongside with this if we go in this direction. But more and more I'm realizing we have the education part, but we also have that responsibility to the animals and their caretaking. And as we develop the program, we may have to think differently about how that is developed. So if anybody has questions about that at this point.
That's my question is not about that. It's about the first thing you said about the 2 or 3 application. Do the students who are already in the program, do they have to reapply?
They do not. Once they have been accepted, they are ours for a long time. And I do have to say, and I'm going to knock on wood, but I'm going to say with such positivity, right now, the students that are here have expressed their interest of returning. Like we are regularly checking in to make certain that Chippewa feels like they're home. But that's an excellent question, Jim.
Megan, I love the idea of a Chippewa farmer, but just one thing to consider. I know we don't have the 50 years, but what we do have is the fact that because we are new, we can build towards the future much more easily than maybe a program that's been entrenched for 50 years. And so I'm hoping that you're looking at the future of farming.
Yes,
And it might not be one farmer. It might be that you're thinking of maybe 4 farmers that could be coming in at different times of the year to work with students. For example, it might be that you have somebody who's experienced with vertical farming, which is kind of a new emerging type of farming, very urban, and increasingly, I think that's what we're looking for to set us apart from the rest of the ag science programs.
I can completely agree. And please know, I think what your point is well taken. We want to always be, we are the 21st century farming. And that's everything, from drones to the vertical farming to roof farming. I think when I'm thinking of farmer is to give consistency for our animals. I think we have a large amount of community members who are experts in different things, who have already offered their services to come in and speak to our students, and to know that we have this expertise within our backyard to bring them on. I think we can tap into those moments where if somebody really knows about chickens, having them come in. We've already gotten 2 of our selectmen to commit to coming in order to teach about meats and recognizing that for our food science, as well as sheep, in order to explain like these are the things that you need to be aware of. And so not just about the cuteness of the animals, but really recognizing this is the anatomy. This is what you have to understand. Here's how you approach it. And if we have these experts, our students are going to be better equipped for going beyond that classroom experience. So again, we're creating a farm and creating a learning experience and blending those two.
Okay. A koi pond. Okay. All right. Well, building status. We're done. No, we're not. But for the first time, last week when I was or a week before last, when I was going through, for the first time, I could actually see the end of this project. We are at the point now where we have completed the section of the building that we rehabbed from the old building in the north end. We've completed the shops. Those are now have been turned over to us. We've completed the south end, including the greenhouse. The only thing in the south end that remains are the science labs, and they are making very, very fast progress. A lot of the site work has been done, not all of it. There's still site work that remains, and of course, the big barn, Building F, that has to be completed. But that is really moving along rather quickly. And when you realize that the inside of it does not get all the fancy insides that this building gets, it's really moving in the direction of being completed at its current delivery expectation, which is before the end of the year. So I'm hoping we're not going to see dates like December 40th and December 50th. But I think we're going to have it done. So again, that's sort of where we are. We have been spending down the amount of money that we have. That's in excess of what we need, but we seem to be in good shape for finishing the project on budget, and that's more or less where we are. We're drawing this thing, I think, in the direction of a conclusion. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but that's really more or less where we are. Alex?
My one question is, do we get John's 20,000 to add to our money to spend?
Well, we didn't quite spend 20,000 tonight with change orders, but we did have a few of them. Yeah, I hope so. I hope we do get it. But in any event, that's more or less where construction is. I feel free to attend if you want a tour of the inside of what our building looks like. But it's all functioning in this part of the greater building, and I can't wait to have the science labs and Building F. I will tell you that we are making progress behind the building. If you look out the back, you'll see that they've been doing a lot of grading, and that we've gotten most of their construction materials out of here, out of around the immediate area of the building. The other thing I'll point out is that the trailer, I think I mentioned earlier in the meeting, the trailer is gone. That whole area is being graded, and will very shortly look like something instead of this the kind of trailer mess that they had there. And this fence that you see out by Building A, or I should say by the shop area, that fence is going to be pulled way back onto the site. And oh, we need.
Keep going.
Okay. And well, okay, now I understand. So we'll I can't read something that far away. Yeah, so that that fence is going to pull back, and what you're going to see pretty much soon is that the only place where construction on the site is ongoing, except for the science lab, will be back over at the F building, back at the big barn, and we're going to be pulling back in that direction. So that's where we are. If there are no more questions, Nicole, I'm sorry, Michael.
Quick one, but other than the seating, which we talked about, the grass seating and the soccer fields, end of December, maybe March would be the latest that we're looking at.
I think you're going. Well, right now we're calling for all of the work on the project to be completed by the end of December, other than punch list items and other than the soccer fields. You know, one of the reasons why I asked the question, well, if we can't get it seated, should we sod it? And the reason we don't is because that would be turning it over to us in that condition. That would be finished. And if they turned it over to us in that condition, we would be responsible for the 10,000 gallons of water a sod field will need every day in order to establish itself. And so instead, I think the seeding program is good because until that thing is really in, they're responsible for it. So that's the reason why we went in that direction. And so yeah, that will be the one that will be the one hangover, will be the finishing of the field and having the landscaping contractor in here doing that. But we should have everything else by the end of the year.
Landscaping contractor would be doing that in the early spring.
Well, into the spring, into the summer, it's got to be established. So you may be here through the fall. You know, that's so.
But we're definitely looking at graduation being on site.
Well, I don't know where we're going to have graduation since they really enjoyed having it in the depot last year. But we will be in a position to have. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe. We should be able to do it. It depends on how we're going to set it up, because we have a graduation site, but we probably will have to build a stage because we don't have that. We have options. We have on-site options, is what I'm saying. So that's possible. It's possible. Okay. Anything else? Nicole, we have any money left?
Well, I'm happy to report that the state just approved our most recent payment request, which was just north of $7 million. So we'll be getting that money in by the end of this month. At the last building committee meeting, we approved application 15, which took us for the fees due for construction through September 30th. And at our next building committee meeting, we'll be talking about application payment 16, which is for work done through October 31st. In the event that the building committee does approve that payment, that would bring us to $24 million paid of the $30 million contract to ONG. Any questions?
Well, pretty soon we're going to say done. All right, very good. Now on to action items. Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you for reminding me. We'll take a short break. Okay, we'll call this meeting back to order. We'll move on to the action items. The first one is policy review, policies for review and approval. The first is bylaw 9160, student representatives on the Board of Education.
This is a new bylaw to us. We had talked at the last board meeting that we were in agreement to have student representatives. I had looked at some model student representatives on Board of Education, and a special thank you to Sue Haverly, who also found some additional ones as well. When we looked at it with the Long Range Planning Committee, we came up with the policy that you see before you. And what you'll see is really what I want to draw everybody's attention to is the roles and responsibilities for the student representatives and making certain that you recognize these are the procedures that we're seeking to follow.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or on the particular bylaw that's been put up? I know I had one. The first line, it mentions that, well, first couple of lines, it says that the board supports seating 2 students. If we're seating students on here, as opposed to having student representatives too, does this create, I wonder, any FOIA issues? I mean, are there communications related to board work subject to FOIA? Do we have to make sure that they understand how to make that available for the open records law? I don't know. It's just a question that occurred to me when I was reading through it.
I was under the impression that we'd said 1 student. When did it get changed to 2?
No, it's always been 2, Alex.
Has it?
It's been 1 junior, 1 senior.
Oh, that's right.
With the view that the junior might move up and become the representative in their senior year. Yeah, Justin, I'm sorry.
Can we get rid of the phrase "as the clients" within the educational corporation? The idea of the student being a client, I don't think that's the most effective word. Also, the idea of calling us a corporation, it sounds like we're a for-profit enterprise, which we're not. And then also the idea of, when we say that the students are a client, to me it connotes or it sort of gives them more power than, frankly, I think they deserve. And let's see. And I think the other idea is that when we say that they're clients, that we're tailoring, to their needs. And again, that's really not how education works, in a classroom setting. So I would like to strike that whole phrase. And it's really grammatically, it won't upset anything because all it's doing is further modifying students. And
well,
so we're just in the striking the phrase "as the clients" within the educational corporation.
Yeah, if you take that clause out, the rest of it continues to read as English.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
I would hope it does.
Non-restrictive or positive.
We're good.
Okay. Are you going to would you like to make a motion to amend to? Well, it doesn't have to be a friendly amendment. You can make a motion to amend. We'll take a vote on it. To remove the clause "as the clients within the educational corporation."
Yes.
Okay.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Further discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Chairman votes aye. It's unanimous. That's now been excised. Any other thoughts or proposed modifications?
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Another point about selection. Mary raised an interesting point, about a student who at the conference meant how she only slept, 2 hours a night. I think that's kind of disturbing. And my concern is that this type of opportunity is going to attract the kind of student who, volunteers for everything, already has a lot going on. And, I would be more interested in getting the perspective of student life from somebody who's not in the top 10 of the class. I think maybe looking at, do we even have a form, the recommendation form? Like, have we determined how we're going to do that yet?
Number two, what we're seeking is that they provide us a letter of intent. And then it's just making certain that they've fulfilled academic requirements. One of the things I did not want to have their eligibility contingent on a GPA. So really just making certain that they're fulfilling their requirements and would be considered eligible. Utilizing that a committee of student representatives, high school administrators, that we can review and select. But I think knowing full well, yes, we want to get someone who becomes the voice of the students. I think sometimes when it's only the valedictorians whose voice we only hear or the star athlete, but really looking for that person who can share the experience. I think this is what we're looking for, is what is the voice of Chappaq.
Michael?
On that same note, that we're trying to attract maybe even more diversity within the board. Thank you. We're trying to attract even more. Thank you. We're trying to attract even more diversity within the board. If we look at number 2 for a second, it says a committee of current student representatives and high school administration will review and select the representatives. My recommendation would be to take out current student representatives. I think it would be too tempting for a current junior, let's say, to look around and select a friend to nominate rather than truly looking for students who maybe haven't had a lot of leadership opportunities, but might be really a great asset to joining us at the board level. So my recommendation would be to continue having administrators on that committee, but perhaps maybe teachers or guidance counselors, kind of rounding it out rather than current student representatives.
So I guess, and this was an attempt to create that happy medium. I know in our last conversation, one of the concerns was having it be completely adult chosen versus having some students who may sit on the committee as well. Again, this isn't about voting for kids or them campaigning. They're sending in a letter of intent. So part of their application would be to sit down with some of their peers and explain. But again, this is open to the will of the board in how we want to do the selection, especially early on, but looking for a way to balance that adult decision and have student voice on who they feel can also help carry that torch.
It makes me really uncomfortable that they would have to be voting on peers and who gets selected and who doesn't get selected. And I realize again that you've got the administrators on there, and also I'm not hitting it hard enough there. I realize that you've got administrators on there. And I also realize that many of the students that you'd have as current members would be very trustworthy, but I think it's a little awkward for students to be asked to discuss and weigh the merits of other students that are their peers. I just think it makes me nervous. And what if some of those frank conversations, because we want them to be frank, got out? And I think that could happen if students were saying, "Oh yeah, we're talking about you, and maybe you could have been selected, but we thought that you were too busy." And I wouldn't want that to get out, and I know you wouldn't want that kind of a conversation to get out. And I think it's just too tempting for some high school students to do that. So that it gives me pause, whereas I don't have concerns about teachers, counselors, or administrators making those decisions.
I just wanted to clarify.
I'm
So
sorry.
just so I'm clear, because there'd be students on the committee trying to make the decision. I completely hear what you're saying, but I also think sometimes we get a little too crazy worrying about hurting feelings. I think obviously if they're picking students that are being part of that committee, obviously they're thoughtful students that are going to obviously be mature enough to be able to be part of the conversation. That's a risk whether you have a student or you have an adult. So that's life. I mean, adults talk a lot too. I just think that I trust the judgment of our staff to be able to make that. And I don't think I think we can overthink it too much again.
You know, it's really interesting, and it seems to me how things have changed. Because I know that when I was in high school, this was the time at which, not long before, the students were taking over campuses for high schools. There was a student rights movement. If you had told the students that the student member of the Board of Education was anyone but someone elected entirely by the students, they would have said, "We ain't interested in playing this game." And what I worry in a school this small is, what if you throw a party and no one comes? And if you don't, and part of the reason of putting student representatives on the selection committee is to have them maybe gin up somebody good to get on there to actually serve. And I'm a little bit afraid that we could take this just a little too far. And then find ourselves in the unenviable position of having this fail for lack of anybody to serve. John.
I agree with you. None of us were picked. Have an election, a general election, have a campaign and an election, and whoever gets elected serves.
No, I think it's a great idea. I understand why they might like to go a little bit slower of having it selected this way, but I think ultimately, if you're really going to get a representative, you have to sometimes trust the students to pick their representative. Some people might think that we don't always do such a good job as adults in picking our representatives in government at all levels. In fact, some people might think that maybe some of us were poor choices. But the point is, I don't think so. But the point is, sometimes you have to live with not a perfect situation. But we need to, whatever it is, we need to be able to hear what students' approaches are to things and how they react to what some of the things we say, or we might be leading people off in a direction that maybe they don't want to go. Joe.
Megan, do you know the process that they did for the students that sat in on that counseling committee meeting that I was at a few weeks ago? Because they had a middle school student and a high school student. I was just wondering how they chose those students to sit on that meeting.
I believe those were through staff recommendations.
Okay. Because their input was very helpful for that. I mean, that's the first time I ever sat in on one of those meetings, but it was nice to have their perspectives on some of the questions that were presented. So I didn't know the process on how they were chosen, but I thought maybe that might be one way to approach it.
Lisa.
So I'm confused. Are you saying we should have an election, or it should be by the process that we have here before us?
Well, I'm not saying anything. That's for the board to decide. But my recommendation would be that we try this process first. Let's try to get it off the ground, and then let's see if in the future it's something worthwhile moving to a direct election or something.
Right. And I like having the student representative helping as well. And I agree, we kind of have to trust the process, and that they're smart kids. I don't know that they would get so political or catty, if you will, but we hope. But if it is, then we could change the process. We've never done this before, so I like this. Now, did we use another school? Okay, so this came from other ideas, from other already. Okay, all right. Why reinvent the wheel? Right. Okay. So I'm very happy with the way it's stated.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Alex.
Yeah, I voted against this proposal initially, and part of the reason I voted was because I didn't feel, it was my impression that the students weren't going to get a voice in who's going to be on the committee, particularly if it's the former representatives um, who hopefully have taken this position very seriously, um, would pass it on in a very serious manner. John's idea of a vote, I worry about that because I remember when I was in high school, we decided to vote the worst guy in to teach the teacher a lesson, and we got he got nipped in the bud, so we didn't get to do it. But and I was irate at that time. But now being on the other side of the fence, I don't think that a vote would be a good idea.
Okay. Further discussion? Yes.
Well, first of all, I haven't heard anybody make a motion to approve this as amended by Justin. But if there is a motion to approve it, I'm going to vote against this. And you may think I'm a curmudgeon, but we have 12 people on this board who were voted in to make decisions for the Board of Education for this region. It's a cumbersome process because there's so many of us. We have parents, we have not parents, people who are formerly parents of students. We've got all kinds of different voices here. And I just think that adding students can come and address us and say anything that they want. I think that adding student members to the Board of Education, I understand they're not voting. I just think it will make the job more cumbersome. I have no problem with hearing what students have to say and taking into consideration things that students want to say, but I think that if the 12 of us sit here and then have to take into consideration things that 2 students on the board have to say, I think it dilutes the job that we've been elected to do. And I just don't see it advancing the interests of the board. So that's my position.
Justin?
Initially, I was in favor of this last meeting, and this morning I thought long and hard. And basically, you know, Jim, that's exactly what I was trying to think of all day, and I am not in favor of this at all, basically for those reasons that you mentioned. And certainly I'm calling in my experience as a high school teacher. I spend 8-9 hours a day with teenagers, and my decision is not to say I don't want to spend any more time with them. That's not the issue. What Jim said, I agree with. That's really the reason why I would not support this.
Okay. Further thoughts?
To make a recommendation, maybe we should hold off. There are other schools which are, the Board of Ed meetings are videotaped and the student representatives get a chance to make a presentation or speak, or, so maybe we should all, consider watching one of the board meetings before we make a final determination.
I think that's a great idea. I think though that hopefully we won't tune in the meeting where it's not a representative thing, and it's either really too good or it's really bad, or I mean, you know, as someone who's had an occasional interesting meeting. Yeah. Alex.
I was just thinking about tonight's meeting. Is there anything that we said tonight that we wouldn't have said if there had been a student sitting at the table? Or is there going to be something in the future that we can't say or feel we can't say about the students because they're sitting at the table?
Well, I would hope not, since they could listen to everything we've said. You know, these meetings are recorded, but you know, I don't know. Lisa.
I'd like to make a motion that we move student representatives on the Board of Education 9160, what do I say? Move it before the board for a vote.
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? First, yeah. Okay, it's been moved and seconded for first reading. Is there any further discussion? Well, I think we've, yeah, Jim?
I just want to respond to something Alex said. Mike? Oh, I'm sorry. My concern is not really being prohibited from saying things in front of the students or being concerned about that, about not having an open and free exchange. It's adding 2 more people to the Board of Education, 2 more perspectives, and I understand the student's perspective is important, but we are here to do this job, and to have to consider that, I just think is just a burden that the board does not need. So I'm not worried about being able to speak freely. It's just, we're here to do the job, and that's my concern. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? All right. It's been moved and seconded to approve this bylaw for first reading. All those in favor? All those opposed? What? Are you still counting? All those opposed? All right. It's gone down. Anyone else abstaining? Did we get everybody? I think that was everybody. Yeah. I voted in favor.
What was the count? Oh,
Yeah.
don't you decide, Greg?
No, 6-6 is a denial. You need 7 votes to 12 member, with all 12 here, you need 7 votes. So this has not been approved for first reading, okay? Let's move on to first reading policy 6111, graduation calendar. I'm gonna,
Taking notes. All right. For the school calendar, as you can see, this was last brought before you in 1999. This year, they have passed a public act in which we can set the graduation date no earlier than 188 days from the school calendar based on the original set calendar. And so at this point, providing a policy for the board that we are able to utilize that public act in order to set our calendar dates. And again, this idea, and I think we've talked about this in the past, is so that way we can set our graduation date earlier. Families can book airplane tickets, get parties ready, all of those things. So this is really a courtesy to families. So.
all right, I'm sorry. Jim?
I move that the board approve policy 6111, graduation calendar, for first reading.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Chairman votes aye. That's unanimous. Second reading, policy 5125, student records.
This was originally read over the summer, and there was some significant editing that was being sought by the board at this time. We brought it to our Curriculum and Education Committee, and so at this time, what you see before you is the edited version based on some of the requests, as well as things that the Education Committee saw with the CABE language being recommended.
Okay. Jim?
Move that the board approve 5125 as policy of the board.
Okay, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Discussion. Mary?
Well, I guess I'm hypersensitive to this, but I still have a problem with the law enforcement unit
You know what
paragraph
page you on?
that's there.
Yeah. Can you give us a page or paragraph?
Let's see.
A law enforcement unit.
It's page 2.
You mean the definition, law enforcement unit?
Yes. I see, my son is Korean, and one of the things that ICE was starting to do was go after Asian people. And the thought that he might have a problem because an ICE agent wants to question him, that bothers me. He's a United States citizen. Them having access to our student records bothers me a lot, especially ICE, because this is not the place for them to go after people. They can follow them home. They can find out where their parents are. That portion of it just bothers me because ICE would fall under this category. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? It does say of an agency or institution that is officially authorized or designated by that agency or institution. I just have a problem with ICE having any access to our student records.
I'm reading it as just a definition, not that they have any power or control, I guess. I mean, there's definitions of all the different different groups. So I guess I'm just not reading it that way.
I know, but I don't want some child taken out of Washington Primary or Booth or
If I may,
Chippewa
doesn't it
by ICE. That could happen if they have access to our records.
if that's the law, if the law permits them to have access, and I don't know what the law is because it refers to certain laws here, Privacy Acts, et cetera, and quite frankly, I don't know what those allow. But if the law is that they have access to those records, I assume if we approve this policy, then they would have access. And if that is the law, then I don't know that we can prohibit it. So maybe if you're that concerned, and I understand that concern, we need an explanation from our attorney. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I have I mean, I'm trying to find out where it defines law enforcement.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to find, where it refers to.
And I want to see where it goes, but unfortunately, is there a way to search this? Yeah, here it is. No, that's not it. I mean, if this were something other than a Google Doc thing, we might be able to search it. Does anyone know how to search this? Yeah, like searching for words in it. Can you do that?
You gotta open it with Google Docs.
I'm looking for that, whatever that definition is. Law enforcement.
Are you looking for when law enforcement's mentioned? How many
Yes.
Yeah.
It's mentioned 3 times, and
Where? I'd like to see where.
hang on. In the document? Yep. If you look under student record,
Right.
there's a part that's been stricken out completely right above law enforcement, and then
How do you search? It's not there anymore.
well, it's crossed out. Yeah.
Where is it?
Right above the law enforcement.
But where does it say law enforcement here?
It's, I don't see that. That's what I was just looking to. Oh, records of the law
record of the law-
enforcement.
oh, I
And then
unit
the last time it's under
are
school
not
official.
considered student records.
It's under where?
It's under school official, which is 2 below. It goes law enforcement unit, substitute, and then school official. No. It says school official means a person employed by the district as an administrator, supervisor, instructor, or support staff member, including health or medical staff and law enforcement unit personnel.
Sorry, where are you seeing that?
Staff official.
Under
Third line.
school official, under that.
Third line begins law enforcement unit.
But if you look at that language under school official, it says it means a person employed by the district. So, for example, a law enforcement unit personnel would be somebody that Chapag has hired
Yeah, if we hire.
specifically.
Stand at the door.
But wouldn't that be Rich or?
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
And the actual law enforcement unit paragraph has it. That's the third one.
Well, you talk about the definition of law enforcement.
Yeah, that's the third time it's mentioned.
All right there.
Since one's a definition and one's crossed out, it's really only the third one that we have to worry about.
Yeah, this, if I may, if you look at law enforcement unit, it's really not referring to ICE. Individual office, department, division, or other component of an educational agency or institution that is officially authorized or designated by that agency or institution to. Doesn't seem to refer to federal law enforcement.
Yeah, it does. I would agree. I think it just means this is really your resource officer, right? Or someone we hire to be a police officer. And it doesn't seem to, and it seems to indicate that in the student record thing, it was just.
Greg, your microphone.
In the student record thing, it was just an exception. So it says records of the law enforcement unit of the district are not considered student records. So that, but that's been stricken anyway. And so the only other thing is this other reference to it under school official. Law enforcement unit personnel. Well, what does this mean to, well, what, I don't know.
See, the enforcement laws or refer matters of law enforcement to appropriate authorities, that to me would say that would be ICE.
Where do you see that?
That's number one. It says law and enforce laws or refer matters of law enforcement to the appropriate authorities.
Right. But what you have to look at, Mary, is where it says law enforcement unit means an individual office, department, division, or other component of the.
Refer matters of law to appropriate authorities. Should have to get a legal opinion.
Well, I guess the question is.
Education agency or institution is the key there.
Well, but educational agency is other component of an educational agency. So does that mean that all the first ones, individual office, department, division, all are part of an educational agency, or is this?
It would by the language.
You're the lawyer, come on.
Well, seems to imply that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
Mary, maybe you should address this with CABE and find out how other school systems and other policies are handled. I mean, when was the last time you heard of ICE raiding a public school system?
I have.
You have?
Seen it on the,
In Connecticut?
on the news. Yes, and that's why it came up in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. When they're taking people that served our country and deporting them, I find that as a problem. So for them to take children out of a classroom, I wouldn't put it above them.
But just to speak to John's point, that hasn't happened. I mean, that you're right that maybe if we continue down maybe the wrong path, that could happen, I think, in a dystopian future. But in practicality, ICE does not go into schools, nor would they probably be given permission to go into a school to remove students from classrooms, to gain access to student records. They would not be given that permission. It just doesn't happen right now.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Alex.
Yeah, it appears to me this is geared more to things where an event happens in the school that we as a school are required to report to the police. And that's what it's really aimed at is, if there's an assault on campus or something of that nature, aren't we required to report that to the police?
We are required to cooperate with the police.
Yeah.
In an investigation.
Yeah.
Terms.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this thing, I'm trying to find what the operative language of this thing is, this policy is, and it looks to be on page 4, right before it starts to be yellow highlighted, where it says the superintendent should be responsible for ensuring all requirements under federal and state statutes carried out by the district. They'll develop procedures for providing for the following, and it goes on to list all of these areas in which we'll have procedures about related to student records. I don't know that this. I'm not, and believe me, I was very much against allowing law enforcement into the building when they clearly can wait out front, and if they're waiting for someone to leave. I didn't want them in the building. I thought the school ought to be a safe place. And if we need them, if we invite them in, that's different. But if we don't invite them in, I have concerns about that. But I don't see where this is authorizing ICE or any other federal agency to do anything. I think it's just a question of, I think the only reason they define law enforcement agency is to deal with law enforcement records. I just don't see it. Anyway, Lisa.
I'm just curious, does this come from CABE? It is? Okay. So perhaps, I mean, if this is CABE language, then it wouldn't make sense to go to CABE to get clarification because they wrote it. So I kind of trust their opinion on this. And we could be talking about it all night. So unless we want to table it or until the next time or we find out for sure, but if this is CABE language, I'm okay with the way that this is stated.
All right. Yeah, Jim.
Mary, if you feel that strongly about it, I'll withdraw my motion to approve it if that's what you want to do.
How about we table it and we find out more about if ICE is included in that? Because
All right. I would entertain a motion to postpone consideration to our next meeting.
Well, I'll just withdraw my motion to approve. Well, is the second withdrawn?
Did I second it? I withdraw my second.
But I don't think you need to necessarily withdraw it, but I think what we would need to do is vote to postpone consideration to our next meeting. If that fails, then you can withdraw it. But I think that's the right way to, you can't table it, because anything placed on the table has to be taken off before the meeting ends. So it would be postponed consideration. So is there a motion to postpone consideration to our next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Chairman votes aye. That's unanimous. It's postponed till our next meeting. All right, we're going to move, at this point, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session to consider the request of the Region 12 administration to expel 2 Chippewa Valley students and possible action. Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? We're in executive session.